lamps full understandings. Please like, subscribe and share. The events after the birth of Jesus. Circumcision, Day 8. First missed Passover, Day 29. Presentment in the Temple, Day 45.
On the 8th day after Jesus was born, March 12, 6 BC, he was circumcised. A separate video called The Circumcision deals with this celestial event subject in more detail. On the 29th day in Bethlehem, Mary and Jesus are still in an unclean state from birth through day 40, Leviticus 12 verse 2-4. The date is April 4th, 6 BC, a full moon Passover date. In this unclean state, they both must avoid going up to Jerusalem and attending the Passover. It is interesting to see this as a shadow of his future manifest destiny to be cut off on the Passover, as we find a blood moon at Virgo's feet on this first missed Passover day. Just before we discuss the new moon on day 45 when Jesus is presented in the temple, let's just recount what it is that makes us so sure Jesus was born, March 5th, 6 BC. Essentially the star effect that the wise men saw, which concluded in the birth event's day.
Before reviewing the details of the star event, let's watch it play out without interruption through to the birth date. As you're watching, you will see that Jupiter comes up from behind Saturn and catches up to it, because its orbital period is much faster, being about 12 years, whereas Saturn is about 30 years. Jupiter passes Saturn. Approximately 5 months later it will retrograde and pass Saturn again. As an aid, we have focused and fixed a star in the distant background so you can notice Jupiter and Saturn remaining in the same locality against the background celestial heavens. They are not migrating rapidly across the stars the way planets normally do. Early December, about 2 months later, they will conjunct for the third time. During the period December to February, they begin to split apart as Jupiter moves across Pisces. Pisces, the two fish, is mentioned in the book of Numbers when God says, "His seed shall be in many waters." Suddenly Mars and asteroid Juno come into play, as they swoop into conjunction with Saturn. The date is February 21st, 6 BC, and Mary has 12 days remaining as she arrives and settles at Bethlehem. And finally, Mars, Juno and Jupiter conjunct 12 days later. Jesus is born. The asteroid Juno represents the seed, as it says in Numbers 24, "His seed shall be in many waters." Mars, of course, represents the unclean and painful process of giving birth. Jupiter represents Jesus. Saturn represents the female. The comet. In addition to the objects Mars, Jupiter, and asteroid Juno lining up on February 21st and lining up again March 5th, 6 BC, 12 days later when Jesus is born. The comet 2P Encke joins the other three to make 4 planetary objects lined up in both of the Saturn and Jupiter positions that represent Mary settling into Bethlehem and Jesus being born. The asteroid is too small to see as we focus on the comet in this video, but it is there of course since the time has not changed. As we move through the days, starting with the 4 lined up at Jupiter and follow the comet lights up as it goes through to about the day that Jesus is presented in the temple. The comet changes course in motion, highlighting the moment when Jesus is receiving honor and glory during his presentment in the temple. It is particularly confirming that the comet lights up at this time. The comet accentuates the glory of the birth through to temple presentment.
When Jesus was born March 5th, 6 BC, 8 planetary elements aligned and synchronized with the text. 1. Jupiter, the hand of the celestial clock which reads 12 when all the hands are aligned, representing Jesus and known as the king planet, came into alignment with 2. Mars, representing the pain and uncleanness of birthing. 3. The comet, 2P Enki aligned, and shortly will light up when Jesus is presented in the temple the 45th day. 4. The asteroid Juno, representing the seed of Numbers 24 verse 7 aligns, making a conjunction of 4 bodies. 5. The date is a full moon in Virgo, representing Israel, which receives the light of the world born unto her, and the shepherds are the first to be invited to lay eyes on the young child. The shepherds have the moonlight to see their way from the fields at night. 6. Sun was aligned close enough to the comet for it to develop a bright tail that then illuminated the day Jesus was presented in the temple. 7. All located in the constellation Pisces, the constellation surrounded by other watery constellation characters. Numbers 24 verse 7, his seed shall be in many waters. 8. The earth is located with a vantage point to see all these things from our perspective.
The star was a great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. This effect will only occur 7 times within God's 7,000-year plan. The first was about 1800 years before Jesus was born. 4 additional occurrences have taken place, and the 7th is several hundred years yet into the future. When the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn completed in 6 BC, we found 4 celestial objects coming into conjunction all together on March 5, 6 BC. A comet, Mars, Jupiter, and an asteroid. When we complete the 29th day from his birth, we come upon a blood moon, April 4th, 6 BC. This is the first Passover of Jesus, and because he and his mother have not completed the mandatory 40 days of purification for a male child for the woman to remain away from the temple, Jesus and his mother are unable to attend this Passover. It would seem appropriate that there is a blood moon on this day, as Jesus misses a Passover. This is the first Passover that Jesus missed, and the second will also be when Jesus is in Egypt after fleeing from King Herod's attempt to murder him while he was a 2-year-old in Bethlehem. On April 18th, 6 BC, on the 45th day after he was born, Jesus was presented in the temple. On these occasions, when a child is presented to God before the priest, it would be customary for the priest to kiss the child. Every newborn male had to be presented. Eventually, one of those children would be the Messiah. On that day we are given a sign, which is a kissing solar eclipse over Jerusalem. This solar eclipse has an epicenter in the Atlantic Ocean, and only the very edge passes over Jerusalem, causing it to have a very, very small, slight overlap, which is the image of the sun and the moon kissing. Psalm 85 wrote about this celestial event.
Surely his, God's, salvation is nigh them that fear him, that glory, Jesus, may dwell in our land. Mercy, God, and truth, Jesus, are met together. Righteousness, God, and peace, Jesus, have kissed each other. Truth, Jesus, shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness, God, shall look down from heaven. Righteousness, God, shall go before him, Jesus, and shall set us in the way of his, Jesus's, steps. Psalm 85 verses 9 to 11, 13.
There is no doubt in my mind that Psalm 85 is specifically worded to describe the day that Jesus is presented in the temple. The fact that this moment and context are lined up in real time with a solar eclipse that is the image of the sun and the moon kissing is a testament that we are on the absolute correct timeline of the life of Jesus. This chapter constitutes one of the most intimate, touching, and memorable biblical tracts that will forever be at the top of my favorites. Among so many other scriptures, it requires a moment of silence as we ponder these words again.
Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Righteousness shall go before him, and shall set us in the way of his steps.
When they were in the temple, an elderly man who was very devout was guided by God to go see Jesus while he was being presented. Simeon gave praise to Jesus and said these words,
For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles, and the glory of thy people Israel. And Joseph and his mother marveled at those things which were spoken of him. Luke 2 verses 30 to 33.
Likewise, an elderly woman named Anna was very devout, and she also met Jesus, gave thanks for him, and told everybody about him.
And she, coming in that instant, gave thanks likewise unto the Lord, and spoke of him to all them that looked for redemption in Jerusalem. Luke 2 verse 38.
So it was, when Jesus was presented in the temple, he received praise and obeisance from others. We are still looking at this same presentment in the temple moment, and have found that in addition to the kiss of the sun and moon solar eclipse, we find in the narrative that Jesus is praised, extolled, and obeisance is given unto him. We recall that Joseph, the mistreated son of Jacob, had a similar moment. When he was revealed in a very unexpected way, it became a great moment of intimacy between him and his brothers as they reunited and shared tears of joy and forgiveness. We are going to see as we simply zoom out from our focus on the solar eclipse. The planet Jupiter is going to be surrounded by the image of Joseph's dream that foretold the day that he would be honored by his father and his mother and his 11 brothers. A long time ago, a young man named Joseph was much loved and given a multicolored coat by his father. He became a great ruler in Egypt and was a prominent type of Christ. One day he had a dream and he told his parents the details of it.
And said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And, behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Genesis 37 verse 9.
As we are looking at this same kissing solar eclipse and begin to zoom out, we see Joseph's dream in the heavens at the same presentment moment that Jesus is receiving obeisance, and so is the subject of Joseph's dream. We see Mercury and Mars situated on one side of Jupiter, which represents Joseph, a strong type of Christ. Then we see our kissing solar eclipse sun and moon representing the father and the mother. Jupiter, with the solar eclipse, are uniformly in the center. The third planet we see is Saturn on the other side of Jupiter, and the fourth planet we see is Venus. That is 4 planets or stars that are visible to the eye. We now need 7 more stars to make up the 11 stars quoted in Joseph's dream. Nearby is the most obvious star cluster to the eye called the Pleiades, which is traditionally called the 7 Sisters. 4 planets and 7 stars totaling 11 stars, the sun and moon with the king planet Jupiter in the center receiving worship. It is striking to see how evenly spaced the celestial bodies are, as people are often uniformly spaced when they worship. Now you have seen the back parts of God in a similar manner to Moses. While the actual events are playing out on the earth at their appointed times, the celestial heavens, which is a clock, has performed the signs that mimic the context of the events that they were designed to portray in real time. God acted as a solar eclipse over Moses to tell him what he has done with his signs over Israel. He put his words into Moses' mouth, which we now have as his scriptures, and connected them as a foundation to the celestial signs as a tabernacle built on top the land foundation, which is Zion, the land of Israel.
And I have put my words in thy mouth, and I have covered thee in the shadow of mine hand, that I may plant the heavens, and lay the foundations of the earth, and say unto Zion, Thou art my people. Isaiah 51 verse 16.
Prophecy is events in time. Mankind has not discerned correctly time since the papacy changed it. Time is measured with the birth of Jesus as the focal point because God's plan and purpose is centered on Jesus. It is stated as the number of years before or after he was born. As we've established his birth date, we can now move on to establishing the correct date for all the prophecies. The signs are signposts. Many verses with celestial sign descriptors help us to identify the date of the prophecy of the chapter. At this point, the only elements left in the narrative of the nativity story of Jesus is 2 years hence when the wise men visit King Herod. The wise men see the star again and are amazed and encouraged that their efforts will be fruitful. The children in Bethlehem are killed. Herod dies and about 2 weeks later Jesus misses his second Passover, which was very rebellious due to King Herod dying. The family leaves Egypt and returns to Nazareth, where they will be less discoverable and feel safe. The historian Josephus gives us a very detailed account of the events leading up to the death of King Herod and timeframes and events after he died, including the Passover.
Lab's full understandings. Please like, subscribe and share.